It is in my heart, very much so, to help everybody learn to enjoy this fabulous world. I love to scuba dive. There is nothing doing on walking on land that can even come close to the feeling of floating along a coral reef, of watching the beautiful sponges, of looking at the gorgeous fish. I mean, they're so incredibly different down there. It's not like anything on land. And yet all around our entire island is this world down there that very few of you have probably seen. And you all ought to be able to go look at that in person, whether it's in the submarine or scuba diving, snorkeling, somehow. You owe it to yourselves to say, yes, I have made that adventure to the reefs around my home. There are so many things to look at, and fish are not creatures to eat, they're creatures to pet. They're creatures to say, hi, how are you doing? Especially the groupers in the days when we used to have groupers. And I hope to heavens none of you eat groupers because we're so short of them now and they're such wonderful deers. They just come right up to you and look you in the face. Turtles are a lot of fun to play with underwater, not to play with physically by touching them, but just to look at and enjoy. This one was eating over there on the side of the reef, and I was kind of just sitting very still in the water, just kind of waiting for him. And he kind of came over, he came right at me. I thought, this is really cool. And he climbed up on my knees. There's my knees in front of me, and I'm trying not to move at all. And he starts to push his head right up against my, and then he did a little dance because he was so happy to see me. Then he pushed off. But so often, people are afraid of that. There's nothing there that would frighten me, but there are things there that frighten other people. My job today is to help you understand what to do. So the first step in finding out the sorts of things that you should be doing, I get involved with the people that are in my photo center. They come in and they ask me questions and about diving and about the water. And I'll say, well, why aren't you diving with your family? Why aren't you out there with your other people that are doing things? And they say, oh, I'm not a water person. And I say, oh no, you're not a water person. How can that possibly be? And they say, well, I'm not really sure. So I'll say, well, what about the water don't you like? And they'll say, well, I don't know. And I say, can you stand in a pool and water up to your waist? And they say, yeah, I can do that. And I say, well, can you go out over the deeper part of the pool if you have a flotation device and you can swim there? I mean, you can float there? Yeah, I can do that. Well, this is pretty easy, I tell myself, because they're able to do all these things. Some people don't even want to put their foot in the water. So now I've got them out there and I say, well, if you go to the ocean, can you stand in the ocean up there? Oh yeah, I can do that. How far off from shore can you go, they say. Well, I really don't want to go away from shore. Aha, we have found the trigger point. And the triggers are the first thing you need to find. What about it specifically is it that bothers you? Usually it's an older brother threw you in the pool and held you down for laughs, or locked you in a closet and kept you in there for laughs. But find out whatever that trigger is and remind yourself, my brother isn't with me on this dive or in this event. I can now do this without him. So the first step is to find that trigger. Well, this woman couldn't go off from shore. So now I had to find a way, how can we take small steps to get around that fear? So I said to her, first, wear a neoprene wetsuit so that you cannot sink. That way your fear of drowning or falling down into water is gone. The next thing you want to do is make sure, oh, she could wear a mask. Oh, good, so that part's taken care of. How about fins? Go to a dive shop and rent some fins so that you can swim. Now, the last thing I want to do is have her start out offshore where she just sort of disappears in the distance. So I told her, why don't you swim along beside the shore and have someone stay on the shore to mark where you started and swim along. Stay in shallow water. You can stand up whenever you want. You can go to the beaches right there and swim out there and see how far you can get. Then when you're about ready to sort of turn around, sort of look back and say, wow, I swam that far. Or, okay, I can go that far. Now she's seen the trigger and she's overpowered that trigger by knowing how far from shore she could get under her normal conditions. So now she can try to go away from the shore because she's already done it before. She's tested that. And she came back to me later and said, well, I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner. I could have been out there snorkeling with my family all this time, and now I can't. She had gone out and done that. So there was success number one. The next step, someone came into my photo center, and she said to me, well, I don't think I could go very deep. And her husband was there, and he likes to go down to 80 and 90 feet. And she felt, well, that's kind of too deep for me. And I said, well, if that's going to be too deep for you, why don't you try staying a little shallower? Don't go deep. The nice thing about scuba diving is that you can do it in baby steps. So as long as you have, if doing this just a little bit at a time, you might be able to succeed. For example, if you were sitting on the edge of the pool, could you put a regulator in your mouth? Yeah, I could do that. Okay. If you put the regulator in your mouth at just a couple of inches, could you drop down another foot or so? Yeah, I could do that. Okay. Well, if I can go down a little bit deeper, could you do that? How about 10 feet? Well, I'm not sure about that. Okay, so 10 feet might not work. But at that point, you say to yourself, I'm going to slow down and go back a little bit so that I can experience what that is. Okay, so at any rate, so I said to her, do it a little bit at a time. And if you can't go down to 10 feet, back up. Make sure that you have an instructor that understands that if you need to go up, he'll let you come back up. He's not going to make you stay down there. So work with a small class, maybe by yourself would be best. Whatever it is, stay in control of that so that when you're doing the baby steps, you're doing it one little bit at a time, and when you're ready to go deeper, you can. Now, I, for example, would be scared silly to skydive, and I would really like to someday. And after I've been practicing this talk, I've actually been considering doing this. But the problem with skydiving is that I can go down there. I mean, I can practice here, jump off of something relatively tall with a practice parachute. They train you and do all sorts of things. But the next step from that tower is way up in the clouds in a plane. And it's that step I don't think I can handle. So if that step isn't going to go well for me, I'm not sure I could really learn that. So what I would like to be able to do is do it in little steps. Have a plane that went up a little bit and a little further, but you can't. Scuba diving, however, you can. You can do it 1 inch at a time and be comfortable with it. The next couple that came into my photo center, or a family, there were 2 kids with them. And I started to ask the kids first. I think they're like 13 and 17. And I said to them, oh, do you guys scuba dive? I always start with the kids. Oh, yeah, we scuba dive. And as soon as I turned to their mother to start to ask them, and do you scuba dive? The kids already piped up, oh, she's a scaredy cat. And the mother said, yeah, they're always calling me a scaredy cat. Well, I looked at those kids, and I looked that boy right in the eyes. And I said, how would you like to put your head in a bag full of snakes? Oh boy, that got him going, I'll tell you, because more men are afraid of snakes than women. So I'd guessed that one right. I was on the money with that. Boy, he recoiled in a fear. And then I looked at her because she started to call him a scaredy cat. And I looked at her and I said to her, I said, how would you like to put your head in a bag full of spiders? Harmless little spiders. And boy, she was frightened. I said, now we're communicating. Now you know how your mother feels. She's afraid to put her head in the water, and that's how she feels, just like you're feeling when you don't want to put your head in a bag full of snakes. So you can't just walk around and tell people, oh, don't be afraid. Oh, gee, that worked. I'm not afraid anymore. You imagine running a military operation that way? The commander says to the troops, we're going over that hill, most of you got to die, but don't be afraid. And they all hit their helmets. Thanks, Captain, I'm okay now. And off they go. Yes, they're afraid. But it takes courage to do something that you're afraid of. Doesn't take any courage for me to go down 100 feet in the water. No courage at all, because it doesn't scare me. It would take courage if I ever did decide to try to skydive, and I may still consider that, actually, I don't know. But at any rate, it's the courage. That woman had more courage trying to get into the water than it did for those kids to go scuba diving. So for them to call her a scaredy cat is just really an absolute no-no in my opinion. Now, you've got to make sure and work with people that you trust. So I had a lady in the Red Sea, came along and joined me in the Red Sea. And she was with her husband, and she really was afraid of scuba diving. I don't know how she got certified, but she was terribly afraid. She was on the trip just to kind of keep her husband company. Well, she didn't want to dive because the air was too rough, and there she heard there was a current, and there she figured, oh, it was going to be a little too deep for me. And so she didn't want to do those things. So I finally told the captain, I said, look, we need to anchor this boat where it is glassy, flat, calm. I want shallow water. I don't want anything scary in this water because I really would like to see her get into the water. So he anchors in a glassy, smooth place. She says, yes, this is okay. I can do that. So I said to her, what are the rules? Because the frightened diver has to be in control of all the rules. They have to be the ones that say, I'm going to do this. Don't make me do that yet. I'm not ready to do that, and so forth. So I said, okay, we'll hang a line down. You can go down the line. Good, that's one. If we get off the line, do you want to hold hands? Yes, we'll hold hands. Okay, fine. When you're ready to go back, what signal? She's going to squeeze my hand. Good, it's all good. We get in the water, go down about 5 feet, and a group of fish came all around us. It was really cool, a little school of fish, and she looked at that, and she was happy. We could have ended the dive right there, because it counts as a dive. She had the regulator in her mouth. So that counts as a dive. But she said, no, let's go a little further. So we went down the line, and we went down about 20 feet, and she didn't want to go any further, but there was this beautiful starfish only about another 7 or 8 feet below. So I went down and got the starfish and showed it to her, and she looked at it, and that was pretty, and it doesn't hurt to pick them up. It's okay. And I put it right back where I found it. And then I asked her, do you want to get off the, and yes, she went off the line, went forward. I really wanted to see this little wreck we were near, and I had never seen it before, so I was hoping we'd get to it. And we're going along, and we're probably 3/4 of the way there. It wasn't far, and she squeezed my hand. So the trustworthy person, what do? They say, oh, you can do it. Let's go further. No way, because that's when panic can set in. She had already started to feel anxiety. So let's undo that anxiety by telling her, you're in control, because anxiety comes from not being in control. So she's in control. We simply go back, and everything is fine. We go up, and she had a great story to tell. So to have people that you trust, whether it's your support person or the instructor, make sure that you do have that trust and they have earned it. They can't just say, oh, trust me. Another gentleman came in, he was a little older, and about in his 20s, and he said that he would never be able to trust a regulator because he just wouldn't go diving because of that regulator business. And I said to him, well, you drive a car, don't you? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, don't you trust your brakes? Yeah. What's the difference between the way you trust your brakes and the way you don't want to trust a regulator? And he really didn't understand the question, of course, so I simply said to him, repetition. When you drove that car for the first time in the parking lot, if they learned like I did, put the brakes on. Oh, they work. Good. Go a little faster. Oh, yep, the brakes are still working. Oh, yep. Oh, the brakes do work. Good. Okay. And he'd been in cars a lot of times and felt the brakes working. But a regulator, he'd never had a regulator in his mouth before. So how could he possibly know whether it works? He can't trust it. He's got to have repetition. So in your class instruction, the beauty of that is that as the class goes on, they give you these little baby steps. Start with the regulator in a couple of inches, go down a little deeper, do it a little deeper, and they repeat it until you're comfortable. So by repeating it, he could gain some trust. Oh yeah, I can trust that regulator. Then, if there is a problem with that regulator, they also train you how to trust your secondary one. You have a second one with you all the time called a secondary air source, and you learn to take this one out. It might be breathing funny or leaking or something, and you breathe this one, and you practice that in a foot of water, not down in the ocean. You practice that in the pool so that you're comfortable with it. That's the whole point of the scuba instruction. That's why it takes a class and a week-long time to do it, or several days rather. So then you go a little deeper, and not only do you learn to use this one, but you learn to go over and get your buddies. If you've got a problem that can't be fixed, you can use his. And if you don't want to use his spare air, if he's got it for some reason, you can learn to take the one that he's breathing with and share it. It's called buddy breathing, okay? So you breathe out of the regulator, then he gets the regulator, then you get it and he gets it. And you practice that in shallow water in the pool. Now you've gotten of confidence that you can handle situations that are scary. You learn by repetition. So you've figured out your triggers, you've found someone you can trust, you're going to go in baby steps, and you're going to repeat it. All of these are the steps you go through to learn to be a successful diver. The key is getting a good instructor, a good support person. Now, your support person has to be someone who doesn't say, oh, come on, you can do it, you can do it. That's not support, that's pressure. Now you can have a fear of failing. A support person says, I'm happy that you're even thinking of trying for me. Thank you so much. So if you have any kind of support person around, make sure that they do understand how to support. All in all, it's such a wonderful place to be, to float around over those corals and sponges and all of the different things that there are to see, exploring our wrecks, looking at little things. This is not a plant, this is a little cluster of animals. And you get closer and closer to those animals, you see that there's a tube. Those are worms, like your backyard earthworm, only they're beautiful in the ocean. And you get really close to the delicate tendrils that you can see how they're gathering food and oxygen out of the water. Christmas tree worms are in every color known. There's just no limit. And they're only about an inch high. We're talking getting down to really understanding and loving the little tiny creatures. And I love the humor. I'm really into shooting faces and making funny pictures. But most people would prefer to take a picture of the really colorful and lovely fish that look you in the face. Or the fish that don't really look like fish. Or polyps that look more like snowflakes. These are animals. All of these are things that you can learn to enjoy. And of course, we play with the groupers whenever we can. Hopefully the groupers will make a big comeback in Cayman if we can learn to stop eating them and catching them. More than anything, I enjoy the serenity of being underwater. There are no politics at depth. There are no fights and arguments at depth. It is neutral territory. When you go down there, you're so involved in your breathing, you're so involved in floating that you don't think about bills and kids and stuff. You don't think about an argument. It's just all there for the beauty around you. And I just think it'd be so nice if more people who want to dive, now people with phobias, if you've got a true phobia, that's not going to happen. If you certainly are not interested in the ocean, it's not going to happen. But if you want to learn how to dive, you want to learn how to do that, it is absolutely in your power. There is virtually nothing stopping you, unless, of course, you're pregnant. There are a couple of medical reasons, obviously, for not diving, but I can't think of any others. I hope that a lot of you can encourage yourselves and others to go diving. Thank you.